After Silent Hill 2 had one of the best stories I've ever played in a horror game, I was really looking forward to seeing how the original trilogy capped off in Silent Hill 3. And needless to say, the game more than delivers on that front. It was originally conceptualized as an on rails shooter, an idea that was forced on the team by the Konami higher ups after the low sales of Silent Hill 2 in Japan. The team would later pivot back to a traditional horror game that feels more familiar to us with third person controls, as they did not feel that the tone of Silent Hill lent itself well to a concept like that, losing valuable development time and budget. It was developed at the same time as multiple Silent Hill games, including the next game, Silent Hill 4 The Room. The game would be released in 2003 for the PlayStation 2 and later be ported to PC. In the game, we follow Heather Mason, the grown-up version of the baby that Alessa's spirit gave to Harry at the end of the first game, which means that yes, Silent Hill 3 is a direct sequel to the first game. After Silent Hill 2 did a self-contained story, it was quite nice to see a direct continuation, not that the series has to continue from where the last one left off. In my opinion, Silent Hill can work perfectly well as an anthology series, but revisiting the old characters felt really good. Game also decided to combine the occult themes of the first game with the more personalized horrors of one's psyche from the second game in this one, and I, for one, am all for it. The game continues to delve further into the order from Silent Hill 1, but then the town's actual monsters and projections are tied to Heather's own battle and mental states like James or Angela's version of the town from Silent Hill 2. There is a lot to talk about with this Silent Hill, so I won't waste any more time. So let's start with the story first, as usual. Silent Hill 3 begins with Heather walking into a very familiar looking amusement park. Confused as to how she ended up there, we explore Lakeside, fighting enemies along the way, until we get to a locked door to a roller coaster ride. With no other option, we hop onto the tracks and make our way down them when she wakes up and we find ourselves in Happy Burger in a shopping mall. Getting out of there, Heather goes to a nearby payphone to call her dad and starts to head back home. Along the way, she encounters a stranger who approaches her and seemingly knows her name. Immediately put on alert, Heather shows off that she is the smartest Silent Hill protagonist so far and tells him off because stranger danger is a real thing. We will see another case of it later, but I am getting ahead of myself. She ducks into the woman's washroom and then hops out the window, but is forced to turn back into the mall as the way out is blocked. There, we find ourselves caught in a maze of connected hallways and obtain the handgun on the floor of a shop, only to immediately use it on an enemy that jumps us. This enemy is very similar to the one Heather just saw in her nightmare. The same dog enemies are encountered here too. Moving on, we find another living human in the back rooms of the mall, a white-haired lady that cryptically tells Heather to remember her past and find her true self, muttering something about paradise. She also introduces herself as Claudia, so now we know who the main villain of the story is going to be. She also speaks and acts like another character that we know, Talia Gillespie from Silent Hill 1, although that is by design, but I'll save that for later. She leaves after this cryptic message, and Heather takes an elevator down into the other world. One neat thing about the design this time is that unlike the water damage look of the other world in Silent Hill 2, this game chooses to bring back the rusty chain link fence aesthetic of the first game's Otherworld, which will also make sense when we get further along into the story. We also get reunited with our old friend, the radio, during this elevator ride. It functions largely the same as it did in Silent Hill 2, including the volume dial. Making our way through the Nightmare Mall, we face a giant worm-like boss at the end, which dispels the otherworld, reminiscent of how we dispelled the otherworld in the first Silent Hill, with boss fights. We meet the man from earlier, his name is Douglas, and it seems he too saw the same otherworld Heather was just trapped in. Heather tells him off again and makes her way home through the subway. There, we see that it is empty with the exception of Heather again, meaning it is not going to be an easy subway ride home. There is an interesting optional quest where you can read about a man who died falling on the train tracks and an occult magazine that states that people who die in accidents can stay and haunt the same place they died, not even aware that they passed on. If you then make your way to the spot mentioned in the newspaper, Heather is pushed onto the tracks and has to quickly climb back up. It does not have anything to do with the main game, but it is such a cool little detail. We do have to go back onto the tracks late and once again run over back to the platform before the train runs over us. We then board that very same train that takes us to an unmarked station leading out to an underpass. This place is usually the most frustrating section on repeat playthroughs due to how much of a labyrinth it is. Once we leave the underpass behind us, we take a short detour through a construction site leading to an office building. There are a good amount of items, including one of the best melee weapons in the game, that is the katana. We then transition back into the other world via a classic headache of our main character, and in the transition we hear,
"It's being invaded by the other world, by a world of someone's nightmarish delusions come to life."
Is that? No way. Harry Mason's voice talking about the other world. It felt like a nice payoff, knowing that the dad that Heather spoke to on the phone is Harry Mason. It's going to be really good to check out what he has been up to all this time between Silent Hill 1 and this game. For now, we still have to make our way back to him. We also meet another one of our characters, Vincent here, who comes off as very shifty, but supposedly is on our side for now. This is also where we get the revelation that the character we have been playing as is Heather Mason, the daughter of Harry Mason. The game very cleverly hid this, and even the back of the box used Heather's actress's last name instead of Mason. Vincent leaves us while we have to deal with a very large monster blocking our way out of the office buildings. There isn't a traditional boss fight here. Instead, Heather finds a storybook containing an old folktale chronicling a monster that used to terrorize the people of the land. Since the rest of the story is torn out, we have to locate the remaining pages all around the office buildings, which go on to tell us that the priestess would actually fail and be killed by the monster, but God would take pity on her and resurrect her. She would then go to the monster once again and use an incantation to finally defeat it. Heather utters this incantation out loud, which gets rid of the monster in her world as well. It was certainly a unique type of boss fight where you did not actually have to fight it. Instead, you had to solve a puzzle. Finally, we can leave the area behind. We then make our way to Heather's apartments and can finally see what our beloved protagonist from the first game has been up to for all this time.
Dad, I'm home. Listen, something really crazy's going on. I think we should... Dad? Dad?
It truly hit hard for me. Harry is older now, but it was still a punch to the gut to see the same man who went to literal hell and back for his daughter is just sitting there, dead. There isn't even an indication that he put up a fight against his attacker, just that he got surprised and then he's gone. Remember, this is the same character who 2 games prior went and fought the actual devil. It truly feels saddening to watch the eventual fate of Harry, and Heather's voice actress portrays this perfectly, encapsulating the shock that is shared by the player as well. RIP to Harry. He truly was one of the great video game protagonists of all time. An open window and a trail of blood clues Heather that the attacker might still be present. She runs off to confront them, coming face to face with Claudia again. She reveals that Harry's murder served a second purpose aside from revenge for the events of Silent Hill 1. To make Heather mad because her negative emotions feed the other world. This would in turn help the Order in making the paradise that they long for so much. Heather fights off against the actual creature who killed Harry, and in a satisfying boss fight, kills it. Next on the list is to hunt down Claudia, so Heather has to go back to where it all began, the town of Silent Hill. Douglas shows up, and feeling guilty about his part in all of this, volunteers to go to Silent Hill with Heather. After hours of exploring the urban environments of the unnamed city Harry and Heather moved to, I was super excited to return to the actual town of Silent Hill. On the way there, Heather opens up about her past life as Alessa, as it seems her past memories have been resurfacing, and she relays them to Douglas. We arrive at the motel in Silent Hill, where Vincent left a clue with Douglas to go and find Leonard. We then go to visit Brookhaven, the hospital from Silent Hill 2, to go and find him. It was really cool to explore the hospital again, although I would have preferred Alchemilla Hospital from Silent Hill 1, as it is the hospital where Alessa was trapped for all those years. There, we can find several notes detailing one Stanley who was stalking Heather and slowly began losing his mind, which are highlighted in the intro of the story recap, with things like stranger danger being put on display. Now Heather has to read the ramblings of a man going mad and saying that he loves her and must have her. For a game with creepy otherworld monsters, this is a type of real fear that sticks out to you, because it actually has a chance of happening. We also get to talk to Leonard on the phone, who turns out to be Claudia's father and tells us he's sealed in the basement. Navigating through a maze of rusted gates, we find Leonard was transformed into some kind of monster and have to defeat him. We can then grab the talisman he dropped. In a cutscene, Vincent speaks with Claudia, who berates him for getting her father killed. However, Vincent retorts that he knows she has no love for her father due to all the physical abuse he put her through while growing up. This gives us an insight into the psyche of the main villain of the story, with the abuse she suffered contributing to the fanaticism that she has for the Order's teachings. Heather then returns to the motel room and sees Vincent, who tells her to go to the church where she'll find Claudia. To get there, we go through the amusement park in a repeat of when we were here in Heather's Nightmare. This time, we turn the roller coaster off before going onto the tracks, which proves to be futile as it turns itself back on. Heather uses this opportunity to jump off the tracks this time before she gets hit, meaning we successfully survived this time. Meanwhile, Douglas confronts his employer and delivers what I believe to be the best line in the game.
No this, no that, no nothing. A paradise for castrated sheep, maybe. Sounds pretty boring.
We later find him near the carousel after losing his fight. Heather has a heart-to-heart with him where we learn about his past and possibly why he took this job. He had a son who died while trying to rob a bank. This means that when he was hired to find Heather, it hit a little too close to home, as a child being kidnapped and taken away from what he thought were her parents possibly reminded him of his own son, which, if it is intentional on Claudia's part, makes it even more messed up. Making our way onto the carousel, the very same one where Harry fought Cheryl 17 years ago. In fact, we can actually find one of the notepads that we used in Silent Hill to save and read the words Harry wrote back then. I love this Easter egg in the game, and there is another similar note we can find later. In the carousel, we are forced to fight a remnant of Alessa's memories, her hatred given form in what is my favorite boss fight in the game. You feel bad for Alessa, given what we know about how her life went in the events of Silent Hill 1, but this is not her. This is a manifestation of her hatred. Heather defeating her feels like she's rising above that hatred and not letting it define her, which is a powerful message. Defeating her, we can read some of her inner monologue written in bright red on the ground, which Heather says was Alessa's thought, but she's not Alessa. From now on, Heather will also refer to things Alessa interacted with in the past using I, which is such a cool little detail. She even slips up and calls Dahlia her mom, but quickly corrects the mistake. We make our way to the church to meet Claudia, where Heather starts messing with her by pretending to have fully turned back into Alessa and calling her little sister affectionately. Sadly, this does not have an effect on Claudia, who rebukes Heather, telling her that the birth of the god is imminent. Throughout the whole game, Heather has been in pain due to the growing god fetus in her, similar to Alessa's fate, and now it seems it is ready to be reborn. Claudia then walks off, and we can explore the church, noting the cult's paintings that Heather remembers from her past life as Alessa. This area is actually nowhere, the final area from the end of the first Silent Hill game. Although, this time, Heather actually draws a map of the area you are in, so you're not left endlessly running around the whole time wondering what to do, as you did in the original. You can also go into a church confessional down here, and a disembodied voice speaks out asking for forgiveness for the way she has treated her daughter. I like to think this is Dahlia's soul trapped in the same way Lisa is in the other world. We have the choice to either forgive her or not. Afterwards, we move through the most messed up version of the other world we have seen so far. There really are no other words to describe this place other than actual hell. We catch up with Vincent and Claudia arguing, which ends with Claudia backstabbing Vincent in the literal sense. As he lays dying, Claudia reveals that the talisman that we went through all of the effort for searching for is actually useless. Vincent dies, and Heather begins convulsing, signaling the birth of the god. With very little time, we go through all of our items to see what could possibly work, when the one item that we have had the entire time, the thing that has been with us since the beginning of the game, finally finds its use. The pendant Heather wears around her neck contains a small red ball. This pendant was gifted to her by Harry and told to never remove it. So in a last-ditch effort, Heather swallows the red ball, and it turns out it was Ephlogatus, the very same thing that Harry used to rid Sybil of her parasite when we fought her in the first game. Using it this time yields the same result, and Heather vomits out the god of the cult, much to Claudia's ire. Unfortunately, Heather is a bit slow in actually stomping on it, allowing Claudia to ingest it instead and use herself to give birth to the god. She is then swallowed up by a hole in the ground, and Heather follows, finally bringing us face to face with the god who kills Claudia and absorbs her. Heather then shows she really is Harry's daughter by fighting literal god and defeating it, putting an end to the cult's goals once and for all. She makes her way back to Douglas and pranks him at first into thinking she has fallen to the cult's side, but then laughs it off. The game ends on a screen of Heather visiting her father's grave and placing flowers to honor the legacy of the man who went through hell just for the sake of his daughter. Silent Hill 3 actually has the least amount of endings in the series so far. You also can only acquire what is called the normal ending on your first playthrough. You are locked into it. Upon replaying the game, you can unlock what is called the possessed ending by taking a lot of damage and killing the monsters in the game. And you can also forgive the woman in the confessional. This is due to the hidden point system the game has working in the background. In this ending, Heather falls to the cult's influence and kills Douglas instead. It is a dark ending for sure. The third and last ending of the game is the UFO ending that is unlocked by killing enemies with the Heather beam. In the last two games, you had to use a blue gem at specific locations throughout the game to unlock the UFO ending. So, they've changed it up this time. It is once again a joke ending where Harry, upon learning what has happened to Heather, teams up with the aliens and lays waste to Silent Hill. I will always consider this to be the canonical ending of the game. To offset the lack of endings, Silent Hill 3 features what might be the highest number of unlockable weapons on your second playthrough. You can even get an infinite submachine gun if you kill the final boss of the game with a melee weapon. It makes the combat in the next playthrough of the game trivial, but I do not mind it because there is nothing more satisfying than making Heather run around mowing every enemy you spent most of your last playthrough running away from. You can also unlock an actual lightsaber by mostly using melee to kill enemies to fulfill your fantasies of Heather as a Jedi. Otherwise, if you use firearms more, Heather obtains a flamethrower because a teenage girl with a flamethrower taking on indescribable horrors can only be described as cool. If that wasn't enough, you can also get gold and silver steel pipes. Although they don't have any advantages over the normal one, but they're there. Heather does say that she could sell the gold pipe and keep the silver one for werewolves and vampires, so we know if she ever becomes the protagonist of another Silent Hill, she'll be prepared. The most unique of these weapons is what is called the Heather beam. Heather gets access to laser eyes, meaning you can literally pull a Homelander on the enemies in Silent Hill on subsequent playthroughs. You also need it for the UFO endings, but be warned that obtaining it is a grind, as it means you have to kill 333 enemies in the game. Although, once you unlock the infinite submachine gun, it just becomes a matter of time before you unlock the beam. In what is a first for the series, you can unlock optional outfits for Heather by entering codes in the menu before your playthrough. By far, the funniest one of the bunch has to be the transform costume that gives Heather an entire Sailor Moon transition outfit and even changes the Heather beam to
Sex.
With the combined amount of weapons and costumes, Silent Hill 3 might be the most replayable game of the trilogy, as it continually offers fresh new ways to play the game in each playthrough. If I do replay the game, I'll put something on screen to denote how many times I've replayed it. The game also includes a lot of small Easter eggs and callbacks to the previous Silent Hill games. At the start, we can find a backed up toilet similar to Silent Hill 2, and when we try to grab something out of it, Heather says,
Ugh, forget it. This is way too gross. Who would even think of doing something so disgusting?
Later in the game, upon reaching Heather's apartment, if we check the letterbox, Heather mentions there's no letters from dead wives or otherwise. You can even find a poster in Heaven's Night that states that Lady Maria will be performing on stage later. On the hospital rooftop, upon examining the fence, Heather notes that it doesn't look like it would break or anything. The callbacks to Silent Hill 1 are a lot more explicit and deliberate due to the direct sequel nature of the game, with entire rooms from the first Silent Hill being recreated, like Alessa's hospital room or her bedroom. We even get to see Lisa Garland again in the other world for a brief section during a ladder climb. As mentioned earlier, Silent Hill 3 tries to combine the occult themes of the first game with the psychological nature of the second one. While the driving force of the game is the cult's activities, the otherworld and enemy designs are tied to Heather's psychological nature. Claudia even states that the negative emotion Heather feels feeds the fetus growing inside of her. Alessa's memories bleed into the otherworld as well, with all the wheelchairs found in the game, a callback to when she was confined to one for over 7 years before the events of Silent Hill 1. They also manifest in a more literal sense with the boss fight on the carousel, as her memories are given a physical form that Heather has to fight. In fact, since most of the game takes place miles away from Silent Hill, it's actually Heather's memories that set off the otherworld in this game, and not the actual town projecting it. This means that the developers were able to go wild with the level design of the game. Instead of the sleepy, quiet Midwestern town, most of the game takes place in the more familiar urban settings. Things like being alone in the mall after closing, or going home alone on the subway are experiences that people have had or can relate to. Things like losing one's parents, although not to a horror monster with blades coming out of his arms, is something people fear. This serves to make the horrors of Silent Hill 3 more relatable. The otherworld design of the game does follow the rusty look of the first game, but the team once again used the power of the PlayStation 2 to its fullest, with some of the best looking environments so far. They have not limited themselves to the rusty chain-linked fence look, but introduced new elements to it, with things like fleshy looking walls and excellent use of darkness. All of these elements serve to make the game one of the best looking ones on the system. Once again, the game has a noise filter effect, but unlike Silent Hill 2, where you could only toggle it off during a second playthrough, here it can be disabled from the very start. I highly recommend doing that just to enjoy the stunning visuals of the game. The music in Silent Hill 3 is once again done by Akira Yamaoka, and this time, the goal was to explicitly make music that could be listened to independently from the game. The tracks are as memorable as Silent Hill 2's. In fact, the first time I ever engaged with anything Silent Hill was through the soundtrack, specifically the track Never Forgive Me, Never Forget Me, which was used in the Megamind memes back in the day. I could heap praises upon praises for all the tracks in the game, and it would never be enough. As usual, I highly recommend checking it out. They definitely succeeded in making a playlist you can just listen to, aside from in-game. The combat of the game has seen tons of changes from the previous games. While the mechanic of shooting an enemy to down it is unchanged, enemies no longer die after being stomped on once. In fact, it takes multiple kicks to kill them now. Some of the enemies, like the insane cancers and slurpers, can actually flip the script on you and knock you down for several seconds, which did get tiresome during my playthrough, as the slurpers would constantly knock me over again and again. Unlike the two previous protagonists though, Heather can use firearms and weapons a lot better, as Harry made sure to train his daughter with firearms after the events of Silent Hill 1. This also gives Heather a new move, the block move. You can block incoming enemy attacks and reduce the damage done by them. The devs also added a bulletproof vest into the game that drastically slows Heather down, but gives a 15% damage reduction, as well as completely negates any damage if you successfully block an enemy attack. It is a nice trade-off item, but I mostly use it in the boss fights. The block mechanic, on the other hand, was a neat idea, but did not prove all that useful to me throughout the game. The gameplay is carried over from Silent Hill 2. Things like the radio's volume control and Heather turning her head to signify pickups all return in this game. A new addition to exploration is that ledges no longer have invisible walls you cannot fall off of. If you push Heather near a ledge, she can and will fall off and die. I have died multiple times due to accidental falls. The flashlight also retains the same functions that it did in the previous game and operates largely the same. Heather moves around like an absolute charm, making combat easier and smoother than previous games. Silent Hill 3 also carries over the ability to ditch tank controls from the very start and instead opt for modern free movement controls, which are just as smooth and easy to control as Silent Hill 2. It did help when Heather had to outrun the red light in the haunted house section. The map system is unchanged, and the devs carried over the detail I love from Silent Hill 1 and 2 of the protagonist noting down clues they find in the actual map. One improvement though is that in Nowhere, the final section, Heather actually draws her own map, meaning you're not as lost as you were in the first game. The puzzles in Silent Hill 3 are quite odd to talk about. The game does have a difficulty slider for the puzzles similar to Silent Hill 2. But in truth, some of these puzzles are quite poorly designed. On the bright side, however, the puzzle of combining 2 or more items does make a return for a couple of puzzles, like when you have to use a chemical on pork liver and light it on fire. That was quite nice. However, I felt that most of the puzzles in the game were a downgrade compared to the ones in Silent Hill 2. Even after replaying the game, I cannot remember any of the puzzles I played, which is not a good sign. Things like 3 tablets in the prison or the box in the hospital are memorable from Silent Hill 2. But I cannot think of any such puzzles like that in this game. I even tried out easy puzzle difficulty to see what it's like in this one, and the devs have just completely skipped puzzles in this game. Not as in have an easier solution, just that it completely skips over the puzzle. The cremated key door is just open, and in the office, the drawer containing the rope is open, and you do not need to find a screwdriver to jam it open. Overall, while the combat has changed a lot and is fun at times, the same cannot be said for the puzzles in the game. The enemies are once again manifestations of the psyche of the person being haunted by the town, with all the accompanying symbolism. The enemies are a mix of Alessa's and Heather's fears. The double-headed dogs are once again the fears Alessa had of them. The nurses in the hospital are actually different to the bubble-headed nurses we fought as James. They are a representation of Alessa's fear of the nursing staff from her time of being hospitalized. This makes them closer to the nurse puppets we fought in Silent Hill 1. A lot of the enemies also give off the theme of pregnancy, like the split worm, highlighting Heather's unwillingness to carry and give birth to the god of the cult. The insane cancers are representative of the parasite growing inside Heather's body with its grotesque form. It can even be argued that the horrifying warped appearance of Leonard is due to Claudia influencing the town, where her abuser is turned into a monstrous being, similar to how the abstract daddy looked in Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 3 features 5 bosses, making it have one less boss than the previous game. As I stated earlier, I wore the bulletproof vest for all of the boss fights in the game. It certainly does help a lot. Leonard was the weakest boss for me, as most of the time he's invulnerable underwater. When he does pop up, you can instantly shoot him and he goes back under. You then repeat this until he's dead. On the other hand, Alessa's Memories was one of the more unique boss fights in the series, as she has access to the same block move that you do. She also changes her weapons constantly throughout the fight, keeping you on your toes. The final boss fight was not that memorable though. The design was really cool, I'll give it that, but the actual fight itself was mostly tedious because you cannot block her attacks, and the boss deals tons of damage, forcing you to keep moving back and forth to open her up. Overall, the quality of the boss designs vary wildly, with the Alessa boss fight probably being my favorite in the series, but otherwise I much prefer the Silent Hill 2 bosses as a whole. Silent Hill 3 is a worthy title to cap off the original trilogy of games. It continued and concluded the Mason family story, delivering a very satisfying gameplay experience through it all. It also married the occult theme of the first game with the psychological nature of the second game spectacularly. It cemented Heather as one of the best protagonists of the horror game genre, and its fantastical soundtrack is still an absolute joy. It is by far the most replayable Silent Hill game, and I fully plan on going back to unlock the UFO ending myself, which I will still say is the canon ending of the game. The symbolism and themes in the story, level, and enemy design are on par with Silent Hill 2. I give this a 9.3 out of 10. If you can, try to play the original PS2 version of the game instead of the HD collection. It suffers even more than the Silent Hill 2 HD remaster of the game, with poorer performance and crashes a lot as well. The new voice actors do not match up with the original, Konami has refused to re-release this version of the game, meaning that experiencing this has become harder and harder as the time goes on. Maybe one day, it gets a remake, just like Silent Hill 2 did,